The rain hammered against the attic window, each drop a cold, relentless reminder of the storm raging inside me. Alaric, a 46-year-old IT specialist from Minneapolis, Minnesota, had always prided myself on being a rational man, a problem solver. But no algorithm, no firewall, could have prepared me for the virus that had infected my life, the betrayal of my wife, Bronte. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly. Bronte, a vibrant art teacher known for her infectious laughter and boundless energy, began to withdraw. The easy banter that had filled our evenings was replaced by strained silences. The spontaneous kisses, the lingering touches, faded into obligatory pecks on the cheek. I chalked it up to stress the pressures of her job, the looming deadlines for the school play she was directing. I tried to be supportive, offering to help with the costumes, the set design, anything to ease her burden. But my efforts were met with polite yet firm rebuffs. "I've got it, Alaric," she'd say, her eyes avoiding mine. "Don't worry about it." Then came the phone calls, whispered conversations late at night, hushed tones that ceased abruptly when I entered the room. "Just work," she'd say, a flicker of something I couldn't quite decipher in her eyes. "You know how it is." I wanted to believe her desperately. I loved Bronte with a fierce, unwavering devotion. We had built a life together, a comfortable, loving home filled with laughter, shared dreams, and the quiet contentment of companionship. The thought of her lying to me, of her being unfaithful, was unbearable, but the doubts persisted, gnawing at the edges of my mind like a persistent ache. I started paying closer attention, noticing the little things I had previously overlooked. The way she flinched when I touched her, the way her eyes lingered on her phone, the way she seemed to be constantly preoccupied, lost in a world I was no longer a part of. The final crack in the facade came on a seemingly ordinary Tuesday. Bronte had told me she had a late meeting at school, a mandatory session with the principal to discuss budget cuts. I had planned to work late myself, catching up on a project that was due at the end of the week. But around 8 p.m., my stomach started acting up, a familiar warning sign that I was pushing myself too hard. I decided to call it a night and head home. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed Bronte's car was not there. Probably still at the meeting, I thought, trying to reassure myself. But as I unlocked the front door, a sense of unease washed over me. The house was eerily silent, devoid of the usual comforting sounds of Bronte's presence, the soft music she always played, the gentle hum of the television, the clatter of dishes as she prepared dinner. I walked through the living room, calling out her name. "Bronte, I'm home." No answer. As I reached the kitchen, I noticed something out of place, her purse, lying on the counter. Bronte never left her purse lying around. She was meticulous about keeping things organized, always putting everything in its designated place. A knot of dread tightened in my stomach. I picked up the purse, intending to put it away. As I did, it fell open, spilling its contents onto the counter. Lipstick, keys, a wallet, and a small, folded piece of paper. My heart pounded in my chest as I unfolded it, my hands trembling. It was a receipt from a small Italian restaurant downtown, dated for that evening. The total was for 2 meals, and scrawled across the bottom was a handwritten note. "Thank you for a wonderful evening. I can't wait to see you again. Caspian, Caspian." The name hit me like a physical blow, stealing the air from my lungs. Caspian was Bronte's colleague, a young, charismatic art teacher who had joined the faculty last year. I had met him a few times at school events, and I had always found him to be overly friendly, almost flirtatious, with Bronte. I had dismissed it as harmless banter, a reflection of his outgoing personality. But now the pieces of the puzzle clicked into place, forming a horrifying picture of betrayal. I grabbed my phone, my fingers fumbling with the screen. I scrolled through my contacts, searching for Bronte's number. I wanted to confront her, to demand an explanation. But as I stared at her name, a wave of nausea washed over me. I couldn't do it. I couldn't bring myself to hear the lies, the excuses, the justifications. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that my marriage was over. Instead, I did something I never thought I was capable of. I opened my laptop and started searching for information about private investigators. I needed proof, concrete evidence of Bronte's infidelity. I needed to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Over the next few weeks, I became obsessed with uncovering Bronte's secret life. I hired the private investigator, a gruff, no-nonsense woman named Willow, who promised to get me the answers I needed. I barely slept, consumed by anxiety and a burning desire for revenge. Willow delivered. She presented me with a thick file filled with photographs and documents chronicling Bronte's affair with Caspian. There were pictures of them holding hands, kissing, entering his apartment. There were emails, text messages, and even a hotel receipt for a weekend getaway to a secluded cabin in the mountains. The evidence was irrefutable. Bronte had been systematically deceiving me for months. The rage that coursed through me was unlike anything I had ever experienced. I wanted to scream, to break things, to lash out at anyone who crossed my path. But beneath the anger there was a deep, aching sadness, a profound sense of loss. The woman I loved, the woman I had pledged to spend my life with, had betrayed me in the most profound way imaginable. I decided to confront Bronte. I waited for her to come home from work, my heart pounding in my chest. When she walked through the door, her face lit up with a smile. "Alaric, you're home early," she said, rushing to greet me with a kiss. I recoiled, stepping away from her. "We need to talk," I said, my voice cold and hard. Bronte's smile faltered. "What's wrong?" she asked, her eyes narrowing. I held up the file Willow had given me. "I know everything," I said. "I know about Caspian, I know about the affair, I know about the lies." Bronte's face drained of color. She stared at the file in my hand, her eyes wide with panic. "Alaric, I can explain," she stammered. "Explain what?" I demanded. "Explain how you could betray me like this. Explain how you could throw away everything we built together for some cheap fling." "It wasn't like that," she said, her voice trembling. "It just happened." "I didn't mean for it to go this far, it just happened," I repeated, my voice rising. "You didn't mean for it to go this far. You were sleeping with another man, Bronte. You were lying to my face every day. How could you do this to me?" "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry. I still love you, Alaric. Please give me another chance." I stared at her, my heart aching with a mixture of pain and disgust. "I can't," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I can't forgive you, Bronte. I can't trust you. It's over." Bronte collapsed to the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. I turned and walked away, leaving her there, alone in the wreckage of our shattered marriage. I spent the next few weeks numb, going through the motions of daily life. I hired a lawyer, filed for divorce, and started the process of dividing our assets. Bronte tried to contact me to apologize, to beg for forgiveness, but I refused to speak to her. I couldn't bear to hear her voice, to see her face. The pain was too raw, too intense. As the divorce proceedings dragged on, I learned more about Bronte's affair with Caspian. Apparently, it had been going on for much longer than I had initially suspected, dating back almost a year. I also discovered that Caspian was not the only man Bronte had been involved with. There had been others, a string of fleeting encounters that she had kept hidden from me. I was devastated. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I had loved and trusted, was a complete stranger. I started to question everything about our relationship, wondering if our entire marriage had been a lie. Had she ever truly loved me? Had she ever been faithful? The doubts swirled in my mind, poisoning my thoughts and emotions. As I struggled to cope with the betrayal, I found solace in an unexpected place: my work. I threw myself into my job, working long hours, immersing myself in complex coding projects. The intellectual challenge helped to distract me from the pain, providing a sense of purpose and accomplishment. I also started seeing a therapist, a kind, compassionate woman named Ingrid, who helped me to process my emotions and to develop healthy coping mechanisms. Ingrid encouraged me to focus on the future, to let go of the past, and to rebuild my life. It was a long, arduous process, but slowly, gradually, I began to heal. One day, several months after the divorce was finalized, I received a call from Willow, the private investigator. She told me she had some additional information about Bronte and Caspian that she thought I should know. I hesitated, unsure if I wanted to dredge up the past. But curiosity and a lingering desire for closure compelled me to agree to meet with her. Willow told me that Bronte and Caspian's relationship had imploded shortly after our divorce. Apparently, Caspian had been using Bronte for her money and her connections, hoping to advance his career. Once he had gotten what he wanted, he had dumped her, leaving her heartbroken and alone. But that wasn't the worst of it. Will also told me that Caspian had been fired from his job at the school for inappropriate behavior with students. He had been accused of grooming and sexually harassing several female students, and the school had launched an investigation. The allegations were serious, and Caspian was facing criminal charges. I was stunned. I couldn't believe that Bronte had been involved with such a despicable man. I felt a surge of anger not just at Bronte but at myself for being so blind, so naive. But beneath the anger there was also a sense of relief. Bronte had gotten what she deserved. She had betrayed me, and in the end she had been betrayed in turn. As I walked away from my meeting with Willow, I felt a sense of closure I hadn't thought possible. I knew that the pain of Bronte's betrayal would always be a part of me, but I also knew that I could move on, that I could rebuild my life and find happiness again. The rain had stopped and the sun was starting to peek through the clouds. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with fresh air. It was time to start a new chapter, a chapter free of lies, betrayal, and heartbreak. It was time to find my own happiness, my own peace, my own way forward. Years passed. I focused on my career, excelling in my field. I traveled, explored new hobbies, and reconnected with old friends. I even started dating again, cautiously opening my heart to the possibility of love. I learned to trust my instincts, to be more discerning about the people I let into my life. I never forgot the pain of Bronte's betrayal, but I refused to let it define me. I emerged from the experience stronger, wiser, and more resilient. One day, I received a message from a mutual friend. Bronte was back in town and she wanted to see me. I hesitated, unsure if I was ready to face her again. But curiosity and a flicker of compassion compelled me to agree. We met at a small cafe, a neutral ground where we could talk without the weight of our shared history hanging over us. Bronte looked older, worn down by life. Her eyes were filled with regret and her voice was barely a whisper. "Alaric," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm so sorry. I know I hurt you deeply and I'll never forgive myself for what I did." I looked at her, my heart filled with a mixture of pity and resentment. "It's okay, Bronte," I said, my voice calm and measured. "I've moved on. I've forgiven you." Bronte's eyes widened in surprise. "You've forgiven me?" she asked, her voice filled with disbelief. "Yes," I said. It took me a long time, but I realized that holding onto anger and resentment was only hurting me. Forgiving you doesn't excuse your actions, but it allows me to let go of the pain and to move forward. Bronte started to cry, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you, Alaric," she sobbed. "Thank you for forgiving me." We talked for a while longer, catching up on each other's lives. I learned that Bronte had struggled after our divorce, battling depression and loneliness. She had lost her job at the school and had been forced to move back in with her parents. She had never been able to find happiness again, haunted by the guilt and regret of her past actions. As I listened to her story, I felt a pang of sympathy for her. She had made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but she had paid the price for them. She was a broken woman, consumed by remorse and regret. When it was time to leave, I stood up and offered Bronte my hand. She took it, her fingers trembling. "I hope you find peace, Bronte," I said. "I hope so too, Alaric," she replied. "Thank you for everything." As I walked away from the cafe, I felt a sense of peace I had never thought possible. I had finally let go of the anger and resentment that had consumed me for so long. I had forgiven Bronte not for her sake, but for my own. I had closed the chapter on our shared history and was ready to embrace the future with hope and optimism. The rain had stopped, and the sun was shining brightly. The world was filled with possibilities, and I was ready to explore them. I had survived the storm, and I had emerged stronger, wiser, and more resilient. I was Alaric, and I was ready to live again.